You know how some movies make you want to yell at the screen? Stuff like, "Don't go in there," or "Look behind you"? Well, this one had me wanting to yell, "You're thinking of the Missouri Breaks!" Hey everybody, welcome to Mainly Movies. Today I'm going to be talking about the 2021 thriller, Old. If you're new here, please consider subscribing for a variety of movie-related content like reviews, rank lists, and trailer reactions. All my reviews include a breakdown of the pros and cons, my rating, and some tailored film recommendations, so be sure to watch through to the end of this video for all that extra content. Old stars Gael, García, Bernal, Vicky, Krieps, and Alex Wolff, and was directed by M. Night Shyamalan. Inspired by the 2010 graphic novel Sandcastle, it tells the story of a group of vacationers who find themselves trapped on an inescapable beach where aging is significantly accelerated. There's always something exciting about going to the latest M. Night Shyamalan movie, because you never quite know what you're gonna get. In part, this is due to the inherent nature of his films. Most of them are strange, twisty thrillers that keep you on your toes, but there's also this additional layer of unpredictability that comes along with his films. He is exceptionally good at crafting an interesting premise, but sometimes the execution can be less than stellar. I find that I tend to enjoy his movies more often than not, but there have definitely been some underwhelming ones for me in the past. But because of the oddity of his stories and the unconventional tonal balance he tends to utilize, you never really know where one of his movies is going to fall for you until you go and see it. As almost always seems to be the case for me with Shyamalan movies, the premise of Old really hooked me. It's very simple in concept, a secluded, inescapable beach where the process of aging is significantly sped up, but it offers a lot of intrigue. There's so much potential there, so many different ways that the story could go, so many possible implications of this beach and its effect. At its core, it's a mystery thriller about the who, what, why, and how of this beach. And I found that to be very compelling on its own. But there's also this underlying thematic exploration of aging. What does aging do to you? Not just physically, but mentally. How does aging affect a family and the roles that different members of that family play at different points in their life? So, as with most Shyamalan movies, Old has definitely got some very thought-provoking elements. But, like many of his movies, the interesting premise introduces some issues. With this film, we're presented with this mystery about accelerated aging in time. And perhaps ironically, one of the things that this film struggles with is its pacing. Initially, this isn't a problem. I think the first act does a pretty good job of setting things up in a reasonable time frame. We're introduced to all of the main characters and get pieces of information about each of them that will be relevant later on in the film. Even after we get to the beach, things are paced okay for a little while as the tension and suspense begins to build. But the film hits a point during the second act where things start to become very chaotic. What began as progressively building tension suddenly descends into temporal pandemonium. In a way, it makes sense given the premise, but it hurts the pacing of the film. It gets pretty wild, and there are just so many things going on, seemingly at once. Part of this is due to the surprisingly large cast. There are 11 people and a dog trapped on this beach. So that means there are 12 characters experiencing the effects of the beach at roughly the same time. And so it's a bit chaotic as the focus rapidly shifts from one character to the next. It gives the film a feeling of heightened anxiety, but it does prevent us and the characters from having the time to accept what's happening before the next split-second decision gets made. Although the premise results in one of the film's biggest issues, it also leads to one of its most successful elements, the makeup and prosthetics. With a film centered around accelerated aging, it's probably no surprise that the physical appearances of these characters are gonna change some over the course of the film. Now, for the young characters, there's obviously some actor swapping involved, but for the adult characters, the changes are initially less apparent. But as the film goes on, we do start to see subtle changes. Wrinkles progressively appear, hair starts to gray, all things you would normally expect from aging. But this movie also makes use of some very interesting ideas related to the effects of time acceleration on the body, which results in some unexpectedly gnarly moments of body horror. As unique and compelling as this movie is, it does have some of the same issues that we see recurring in Shyamalan's other films. Perhaps the biggest, that isn't specifically related to the premise, is the dialogue. It's not great to begin with, but then you add the frequently awkward line delivery, and it gets a little rough at times. There are also some bizarre stylistic choices at play here, especially with the camera work and editing. There are moments that are really good, but then there are times where the style randomly changes. The editing gets very flashy and quick cut, or we transition to an exceptionally shaky handheld camera. It's not something that ruined the film for me, but I did notice it, and the inconsistency was a bit distracting. I think Old is a very typical M. Night Shyamalan film. It has all of the essential things you expect from one of his films, positive and negative, including the expected unexpected. And because it is typical, I think it's gonna be as divisive as most of his films are. Some people will like the premise, but hate the execution. Others will love the way the story pans out. Some people will latch on to the more absurd elements and find it very fun, while others will think it's cheesy with a lot of unintentional humor. Personally, I enjoyed it. I found it to be pretty fun, with a very intriguing mystery and some interesting underlying themes. It's not a mind-blowing film, nor is it particularly profound, but it's a unique film that I found engaging and thought-provoking. Alright, let's talk about the pros and cons. The biggest pro here has gotta be the premise. Most of Shyamalan's movies have a very interesting hook, and Old is no different. Here, we've got a thriller focused on age acceleration, and the various implications that come as a result. It's a unique concept and a very engaging mystery that has a lot of components, including some trademark Shyamalan twists. There are some plot oddities that pop up over the course of the movie, but for the most part, I found the premise and its execution to be pretty satisfying. The second pro is the makeup. This is a film about accelerated aging, so makeup and prosthetics were necessary to sell this concept. And I think the film was really solid on this front. It never went completely overboard when it came to the old age makeup. If you were to compare where the characters begin and end the film, you'd see some major differences in their appearances. But while you're actually watching the film, these changes are pretty subtle, and you don't really notice them until they start to add up. In addition to the old age makeup, there's also some impressive body horror that will probably have you squirming a few times. On the con side, the biggest issue is the inconsistent pacing. It's kind of ironic that a movie about time struggles to effectively use its own runtime. It's certainly a problem that stems from the premise itself, but I do think it's one that could have been mitigated by a few different writing choices. The first act is okay, the third act is a little rushed, but mostly okay. It's the second act where things get too chaotic. Things are happening and choices are being made by characters before we even have time to fully process the last thing that happened. It's likely that this was intentionally done in order to heighten the tension and reflect the temporal challenges that the characters were facing, but it did make it more difficult to care about certain events and even characters. The second con is the dialogue. It's serviceable, but definitely a weak point of the script. This is a movie that not only tries to craft an intriguing mystery, but also attempts to have some observational commentary about themes related to aging. But it struggles to convey those more human elements through its dialogue, because it often sounds unnatural. It feels like dialogue rather than normal conversation, and the characters often say sort of weirdly awkward things. That, combined with some rough line delivery, creates some bizarre and uncomfortable moments that could be perceived as unintentionally funny, or just plain bad. Before I give you my rating and recommendations, I want to remind you that if you're interested in buying Old or any of the other films I mentioned today, I do have affiliate links for all of them in the description below. I get a small commission from anything you buy using one of my links, so I'd really appreciate it if you use them if you're in the market for any of these movies. I'm gonna give Old 3.5 out of 5 paws. It's not without its pacing and script issues, but this is a very compelling and thought-provoking mystery that has a lot of fun with its premise. I would recommend Old to fans of M. Night Shyamalan. If you like most of his other thrillers, I think you'll be pleased with this one too. It might not be quite as twisty as some of his other ventures, but I still think it fits right in with the majority of his filmography. People who tend to dislike his films probably won't have their minds changed by this one, but the uninitiated could potentially be converted to fans. If you liked Old, I would recommend Cocoon. It's another very interesting story that revolves around aging, though in a slightly different way. And rather than being a twisty thriller, it's more of a sci-fi drama. If you're interested in another M. Night Shyamalan film that involves a large cast, you might want to check out Lady in the Water. It's widely considered to be one of his lesser films, and certainly has some bizarre elements, but it does some interesting things with its cast. And I can't make a list of films to recommend here without including The Missouri Breaks. To be fair, this has very, very little in common with Old. It's a western about livestock thievery, but it's a movie that stars Jack Nicholson and Marlon Brando, and if you've seen Old, you'll understand the significance of that. Alright, a couple questions for you guys. Number 1, have you seen Old? If so, what'd you think of it? And number 2, what's your favorite movie about aging? Be sure to leave your answers in the comments below so we can get a discussion going. Alright, so if you got some enjoyment, insight, or information out of this review, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe while you're at it to see more videos like this. Till next time, this has been Eliza with Mainly Movies, the way life should be.